Let's go. Yeah, let's go, Finn. Day 20, I believe. I think I'm gonna stop calling them days because they're not consecutive days that I do these videos. So I'm just gonna start calling them stories. Just because I've been inspired by, I think her name is Isabel Paige. I'll put a link to her YouTube, and I love how she calls her little vlog stories. So I think I'm gonna start calling mine stories as well. So it'd be story 20. What are we gonna talk about today? Out here, as you can see, most of the snow has already melted. Most of the snow is gone. Well, I didn't want to say most because you can see everything's still pretty white, but the depth of the snow. Look at this, I'm out here in shorts. Look at the depth of the snow. It's not very deep. Because I would not be playing fetch with Finn out here if it was that deep, because we would lose this ball. Go get it. Yeah. We would lose this ball. But here we are. 20. Story 20. Story 20. Every day I have this writing practice where I take a prompt and I just address it. And again, I'm thinking about maybe try to turn this into a blog. Maybe other writers will find it interesting. Maybe they'll find the prompts interesting as well. Maybe they'll help them with their writing journey. But mostly for me, it's just practice. Like if you think of anytime you do or try to take anything seriously, think about athletes and how much they practice. I think it was Allen Iverson who they asked what it takes to get to NBA. I mean, there's very many different variations of this. What does it take to get to Carnegie Hall? The response, practice. So it's just part of my writing practice, something I do every single morning. Or if I don't get a chance to do it out in the morning, I'll do it throughout the day. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, anything too deep. But the questions that were asked were, what are the 5 books or films that have had a profound influence in your life, or have changed how you view your life, or have had a significant impact in your life? And I thought that was a really good question, because the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I started writing about it. You ready, Finn? The more I started writing about it, look at it. The more I started writing about it, the more I realized, oh shit, no wonder I'm fucking weird. It's stuff that I don't think too many people know about, but I'm sure everyone has heard of the film The Matrix. I'm sure for a lot of people it's probably something that they change how they view themselves, how they view life. Come on. Because it definitely did that to me, but I didn't watch it until I was a little bit older. And then just going off that, it got me thinking about creativity and how, at least I used to have this idea. I always thought to be creative, you gotta be completely original. Go get it. Come on. Yeah, you gotta be completely original. And that creative thought occurs in a vacuum, in isolation. It's a lone, solitary genius who creates all this. And I think I've talked about this in one of my earlier videos. But today I just had my writing session with my wonderful writing group. Again, it's crazy to think about that we've never met in real life, yet I still consider these people an important part of my life. We've never met in real life, never seen each other, don't even know how tall, how short, you know, what people really look like face to face. But yeah, look at it. Hope you all look like face to face. Or what our body language is like. Again, none of that. But we do have weekly meetings where we meet up and just write together. Usually we take turns hosting. So it's not like there's central leadership. It's more decentralized, kind of like Bitcoin, where every week just someone brings something different to the table, a different prompt. We just write together and talk, chat for a bit. Again, it's super helpful. And one of the things that we talked about in this was how one of the members brought up an interesting point, how you think of back in the day, artists usually tended to hang around other artists, other writers, other poets and musicians. People who created something, they tend to be around other creative people. But nowadays, you don't really kind of see that. Well, you do kind of, at least depending on what art form you're in. Stand-up comedy has a huge collaboration. And by that I don't mean they're working together specifically or riffing off each other's shit, but listening to the Joe Rogan podcast and just the cool people he's brought onto his show and that he's talked about and that he hangs out, people he considers friends, you can see why he's very successful and why people who are associated with him have been very successful. It's because what's that phrase? Iron sharpens other iron, something like that. Forget exactly how it goes, but it's the idea that the people that you surround yourself with, the people that you collaborate with, the people that you are not only creating and consuming with, these are the people that are either inspiring what you're creating or not doing that at all. And we had a little interesting discussion about that and how we don't really see that anymore. And it didn't occur to me until afterwards that as far as poetry goes, maybe because poetry is such a niche, there's a niche market for it. Not too many people buy. I got it. Not too many people buy poetry, but the ones that do, they buy a lot of it. I've bought so many fucking goddamn books in the past year. It's fucking crazy, but I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to support other poets because I find value in poetry. I find value in the craft of poetry and value in the craft of writing, which is why some of my biggest expenses are always books. I have so many books that are on my list. Go get it. Oh, it smells getting a little bit deeper here. You can see still very, very beautiful. That again, I would gladly support these artists. And I think part of the journey, at least for someone to become successful, is that you don't really hear about them in the beginning. They kind of grinding away, doing their thing. Maybe working with other people, maybe not. But I think one of the beauties, at least where I'm at right now, is that I get the privilege of being surrounded by other people who are creating, other people who have kind of similar goals like me. And we're kind of just collaborating, kind of just working together. Hopefully inspiring each other, hopefully motivating each other, hopefully keeping each other accountable. And to me, it's a very beautiful thing, because if you think about Ernest Hemingway, Scott Fitzgerald, I think it's the dude's name, wrote The Great Gatsby. Go get it. All these people were hanging out and partying together, and all of them were incredibly successful. And it reminds me of Joe Rogan, some of the guests that he has on, some of the stand-up comedians and other artists, not necessarily artists, but other people that he's brought on, who he's kind of helped bolster their success. And I think it has to do with that, is iron sharpens iron. You help each other out, right? No point of like everyone has a unique sets of talents and unique perspective to bring to whatever art form that they're trying to create. And one of the beauties is that I'm like in the beginning stages of something like this with the writing group that I have. Hopefully I can do the same thing with my Spanish, create a little group like this where, again, people still want to practice, people are interested in creative writing. We can do it a little bit more in Spanish, because I do want to get better with my fluency in Spanish, both reading and writing. Because it occurred to me, going back to the original prompt, those 5 books or 5 films that have inspired me or have just deeply, profoundly affected the way that I think and view the world and what I find meaningful in the world. Matrix was one of them, and you can see it's inspired a whole lot of people. But I think there's a book that probably, I don't know if the Wachowskis have come across his work or not, but the metaphysicalness of the book, the trippiness, the playing around with the logic of time, the playing around with the logic of dimensions, and what that would mean if those kinds of dimensions existed. And again, I mentioned before, Labyrinths, Jorge Luis Borges. I want to be able to read his stuff in Spanish, because I realized that to know another language is cool, but to know the literature, to know what that language could do in the works that it created with people who are fluent in that language, who push boundaries of the imagination, like Borges did in Labyrinth. Again, he's the reason I got into creative writing. He was my first introduction to, again, I had no idea that writing could be that creative the way he created his short stories. And by the time I got into the story called the Immortal, like, I was just completely blown away because the power of what he did with language is that he'd start with simple propositions, simple ideas, and then unravel the logic of those ideas. And by the time I got to that story, I'm just like, what the fuck? What if we are a creation of something else, of something much more intelligent and greater and more vast than we are? Like, how would that change the things that we do now? How would that change how we view the world? How would that change our relationships to nature? How would that change our relationships to other people? How would we treat other people? How would we treat the animals here? How would we treat ourselves, knowing we're a creation of something else? That something else dreamed us into being. For what purpose? Right? That's the next one of the next logical questions. His writing did that. His short stories did that. And I didn't know language had that capability to push the imagination beyond what I thought possible. So again, going back to collaboration, it makes me wonder, like, what influenced him? What influences did he have? I know he probably read a lot of the ancient classics, the Greeks, the Romans, a lot of the, I want to call it antique literature, but the Western canon. I'm sure this motherfucker read a lot, because I think he was a librarian, or he worked as a librarian for a little bit. So he had plenty of time to read and just discover other creative works of art, creative works of literature. And it makes you think about who did he work with? Was there a Hemingway that he worked with that helped inspire some of these stories? Was there a Fitzgerald that he worked with? How did that start? And if it did or didn't, maybe he's one of those solitary creative geniuses. But one of the beauties about that is that his work inspired me, and I wouldn't be in this position that I'm at right now if it wasn't for his work. If it wasn't for his stories, I wouldn't be into creative writing how I am now. I wouldn't have the passion for it. I wouldn't have the interest that I do for it. And it's all because of this man. Isn't that crazy? A man I have never fucking met. Ever. Never met this dude. And yet he's profoundly affected my life by something he took time, energy, willpower, motivation, whatever you want to call it. He took all of that to create this legacy of work that is still around. Again, I want to be able to read it in the original Spanish to see how he thought, how he viewed everything. Translations are cool, but translations are not the original work. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's something very creative about translations as well, because going back to my original idea, right? Nothing is original. And if nothing is original, and if we can liberate ourselves from that idea that we have to be original, we have to just struggle, just trying to create something out of a fucking vacuum. Like, that's, if we can let that go and think, well, this particular person that I know, they inspire me because of such and such and such. I love how the way they think about this. I love how that person thinks about things the way like this, or whatever it is. Taking those inspirations from the people in our life right now, from the people or the authors or the books or the films that we're watching, and then maybe tracing that lineage of ideas. Again, this is another thing that I've talked about, is the ancestors of ideas. I've been able to do that. And again, to be in the position that I'm at right now, where I'm working with a group of people who hold me accountable, whose work I love to read, whose work I love to see get out there in the world and get published. The journey of what their writing careers is gonna look like. Fuck, that's just that's really exciting, and it motivates me, because it helps me think we're if nothing is original, right? Everything is just a rehash of ideas that have been remixed, recreated, reformed, but it's done through the lens of our own subjectivity. That's creative. There's no one else out there like you. There's only one you. And only you know how to be that you. So even if you copy and mimic everything that you see around you, and you do it in a way that pays homage, pays respect to the work that these other people before you have created, in doing that, right, you kind of change your own being. Because if we're not original, if we're creations or simulations of something else, or the Matrix, right? We're all these human beings stuck in an illusion, a giant computer simulation. Why would someone run that simulation? Come on, let's go. Why would someone run that simulation? What's the point? What is there to be gained from a simulation like that? There has to be a purpose. No one just runs a simulation like this just because. There has to be something worthwhile to be learned from that kind of experiment. And if we look at it as an experiment, we look at creative pursuits as experiments. Yeah, go get it, Finn. Creative pursuits and endeavors as experiments, where we're trying this, where we like what this person did, let me try that. Actually, I like what Walt Whitman did with this poem, let me try a little bit of that. The practice of doing that, of experimenting like that, of doing it over and over again. And that's, it's a little bit dark out here, huh? The shadows over here. Again, in essence, being able to take ideas, pay respect to those ideas, honor still living or dead creators with what they've created. Like they say, mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. And last night, me and my girl were watching this documentary called Babies. It's such a beautiful documentary. I mean, again, something I wouldn't normally be interested in, but because we're both going to be first-time parents. I got it. First-time parents. The journey of a child learning how to walk now to me has a more personal and philosophical implication. And after watching this, I'm like, interesting. Because these babies, you see how they struggle, you see how they each mimic what those around them are doing. And in trying to mimic what everyone around them is doing, they learn how to walk. We humans are no different once we're adults. Like, we're still trying to figure out, at least hopefully, still trying to figure out where we can push the boundaries of what we're capable and able to do. And those who are following those creative endeavors, creative pursuits, it's the same thing, man. If you're just starting out, you're a student, you look for teachers or masters or gurus to try to teach you or try to help you learn the way. But along that path, right, of you can't be a great writer if you're not a great reader. And it's just because how can you create something new when you don't know the legacy of what you're trying to do? You don't know the predecessors. You don't know what was done before. And a lot of times what was done before, like, you don't have to struggle trying to figure it all out on your own. Imagine, again, I said this before, babies had to learn how to walk from scratch. They've never seen anyone being able to do it. That'd be nuts. Someone figured it out, but maybe they won't. Same thing with creative writing. Same thing with these people that I'm surrounded with. We're all at various stages of our writing careers. We're all trying to get better. We're all trying to be held accountable to be able to make our writing greater. And part of that is copying, mimicking, letting ourselves become inspired by those around us, letting ourselves become inspired by what has already been created. Because there's a lot of beauty everywhere. Just gotta be able to notice it. Gotta be able to have the eyes and ears to hear it and to see it. And going back to Borges Labyrinth. Wow, Finn, you ready? Ready for another labyrinth? Yeah. I think part of the beauty, or the meat and potatoes, to use that cliched metaphor, of where the meaning is and everything that you're doing, it's in the journey. It's how you're doing it. Because watching that baby's documentary, seeing his kids and how different they were and trying to learn how to walk, how unique they were in their reactions to when they get frustrated, and then but when they all succeeded, they finally stood up and were like, each one has the same reaction. Yeah, we did it. Yeah. I never saw babies like that, as little agents who have these goals that they're trying to achieve, that they're trying to learn how to walk, how to talk, how to navigate their own little bodies, how to move those arms, move those legs, to be able to move like these humans that they see around them doing it all the time, effortlessly. That's beautiful. That journey is absolutely beautiful, and I'm excited for when my son is born and I get to see him go through those varying stages. And it makes me think too, as adults who live and work, pay bills, are under quarantine right now still. Everything's closed, California. Who are those around us that we are trying to emulate? Who are those around us that we're learning from? Because those are powerful influences. And again, watching that documentary, thinking about that prompt of what has inspired me and the path that I've taken because of those inspirations, I have to be onto something. You have to be, because not everybody will get inspired by the same thing. And it could either be because of the way the message is being presented, or it could be because they just don't find this person inspiration, or that person inspiration, or this or that, whatever it is. So not everyone is going to get inspired by the same thing. And if we're all inspired by different things, we're all going to make very different decisions about what to do with that inspiration. Do we follow it? Do we see where it takes us? And for me, it's brought me here. I'm not broke, but financially, I'm not where I want to be. I'm trying to go back to school. Again, I just started classes already. Very exciting, because I love learning. And the biggest thing I've learned, it's not that I love learning, is I love being around people who love to learn what I'm learning. Because then I get inspired. Because then I can... Again, I'm not a solitary creative genius. I love being around people who are inspired, who are motivated, who are excited to share those things that influence them and that inspire them to maybe try something different, to try something new, to push boundaries, to stretch the own limits of their own imagination. That to me is fucking exciting. That to me is fucking motivating. That to me is real learning. It's not technical shit about some fucking math, some fucking books. It's like, yeah, sure, the technical aspects are absolutely necessary, right? Absolutely. The exciting part is, to me, the people and what they do with that inspiration. What do they do? Do they ignore it? They're like, I can never do that. Stuff it away. Or they go, you know what? Let me just fucking try it. I'm going to and just try it and see what happens. And again, it's brought me here, and not quite where I want to be. I can always get better. Can always get more technical with the writing, get more talented. But I am on the path and on the journey of that inspiration, of finding that inspiration. And if I can't find it externally, aka those books, those movies, someone else's art, someone else's poetry, if I can't find that externally, I can always look for it internally. And that's drawing back on my memories of where those early childhood experiences where I've been inspired, those teenage experiences where I've been inspired, where I had a teacher or mentor tell me, hey, you know what? Keep at this. Keep at this. And being able to rely on myself internally to also provide that inspiration, to also provide that motivation to keep going. And if I can do that, and I'm a fucking idiot, if I can do that, Imagine what we can do with a community of people like that. A community of people who might not be like me. Matter of fact, I don't want them to be like me, but they're following that inspiration. They're trusting that guidance, that feeling that they have inside them. And they're following that. They're trusting that. If we are creations of something, of a consciousness much more intelligent than us, much more greater and vast than us, right? And if you created something, why would you create that? For me, ultimately, right, my legacy or body of work, it's going to be interpreted however it's going to be interpreted. My intention would be that people find it inspiring, and they find it inspiring because it resonates with them. It makes them feel something inside that, hey, you know what? Maybe this is onto something. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna just see where this takes me. Or maybe I should think about things a little bit differently. The way he's proclaiming, or he's talking about it in this way, shape, or form. Just following that intuition, that feeling, and seeing where it takes you. That to me alone would be worth it. Why? Because I don't know what's going to take them. But I do know where it's taking me. And even though things are not perfect, there's no such thing as perfection. It's allowing me to find and create meaning out of past experiences that I've had, and to reframe it. Not only that, but it's allowing me to find people who I can develop long-term relationships with, artistically, creatively, as friends, as homies. Naval had an interesting thing. He says on Twitter, he said, compound interest also works in relationships, or something along those lines. And so you think, it's like, damn, look at what Joe Rogan has created by following his passion and by helping other people to follow their passions, helping out young stand-up artists that are up and coming. Like, look at the reach and the influence and the success that he's had. And he's humble about it. He's doing what's, for stand-up comedy, something that I think wasn't possible before. Yet he's making it like a global phenomena. There's stand-up comics in Mexico. I had no idea this was a thing. Stand-up comics out of Mexico. At least for the state of poetry and state of creative writing, at least from where I see it. Again, I try to read as much as I can, but as far as I see in the common culture, in the popular culture, it's just not mainstream. It's not. It's very, very niche. There's only a few very well-known artists that ever break out poetry. But again, that break out and do, quote, become mainstream, or they do get that mainstream success. But with Biden's inauguration, right, you got a poet, young woman, finding success, and apparently she also did something for the Super Bowl. Fucking amazing. Good for her. Make that fucking money. Get paid for your art. Maybe what Joe Rogan has done for stand-up comedy, maybe it's time for poetry, for someone else to do that for poetry, to bring it out of academia, to bring it out of these little niche, very clicky, very, if you don't say the right kind of poem or use the right kind of language kind of shit, breaks out of that. And it goes back to being, again, what I found inspiring in Borgs. Maybe other people find inspiring in Mary Oliver. Going back to nurturing, fostering, extending that feeling out into the world, beyond the limits of our imagination, beyond the confines of academic circles, to everyday people. So what's the point of poetry if the only people who can really understand what a poet's saying are academics who've studied fucking 16 years in a PhD program or MFA, but average American or average person reads it, it's like, I don't fucking get this. What's the point of that, right? just mental masturbation. Not that there's no value in that, don't get me wrong, but I think you gotta have poets of all skills, of all levels, artists of all types that are working together to help each other out. That's all. Collaboration, that's what it's about. Collaboration, the journey of it, seeing how people progress and grow, become what they're meant to become, or what they want to become. If it is all a giant simulation, and these characters, these flesh bodies are just hallucinations of our consciousness, I think there's still beauty. There's a beautiful takeaway from that, in that if we're simulations, we're creations, we can do the same thing. We have the power of whatever created us. So, beauty everywhere. There's beauty everywhere. Come on, my friend. Yeah, beauty everywhere. Learn, appreciate everything around you. Whoa. Love your life. Love your life. Love what you're doing within. If you're not in that stage, again, think back to your past. Think back to those moments that have inspired you. Oh. So I can think back to high school. It happened multiple times, but I was very depressed in high school. Hated myself, hated my teeth, hated the fact that I had to wear glasses, hated my body, I hated everything about myself. Yeah, I remember ninth grade. I still remember this dude's name, Mr. Siegel. He was white. I'm pretty sure he was Jewish. Teacher. He had us do, for one of our projects, a poetry book, kind of like a chapbook, where we practiced different kinds of forms of poetry. And I still remember vividly what he told me one day in class, as we had turned in our projects. At the time, I was dating this girl. I mean, no, what would you call dating? Holding hands? And I made, it's called a diamante poem. So it's in the shape of a diamond. I'm not sure if that's a real thing or not, but I remember that, and that was dedicated to her. And I remember being in class, and I'm so proud of this work that I just finished. We had just finished this poetry chapbook. I'm turning it in. Friends are hooting and hollering. We're fucking acting all kind of stupid and shit in class. And all of a sudden, Mr. Siegel, very stern voice, David, outside now, let's talk. And everyone was like, oh shit, David's in trouble, oh fuck. Because I was a very quiet dude, very introverted in high school. So it's like, oh shit, he's getting in trouble, Over here, Finn, over here, whoa, over here, come on, Finn. So everyone thought I was getting in trouble. Go outside. I'm like kind of nervous because I don't know what I did wrong. And he just looks at me. He's like, do you get bored in class? I'm like, yeah. It's like, do you get bored in this class? And I was like, to be honest with you, no. This class and history are probably the only classes who I find really interesting. Everything else is pretty boring. He's like, don't stop writing. Whatever you do, don't stop writing. Whenever you go into class, you're going to college, or whatever it is that you're doing, he's like, don't be afraid to ask for an alternate assignment. Ask for something different if you get bored. And I never understood why this stood in my memory, because the thing about it wasn't too big of a deal. He was like trying to give me props for what I was doing. But why would he say like that? Ask for an alternate assignment. That stuck with me the whole entire time. And even to this day, I still don't quite understand it. And the only thing that I can take away from it is that, well, that time, again, being a young man, but you look up to this guy because he's super intelligent. He's super cool, super charming dude. You kind of wish you want to be a little bit like him, have the qualities that he has. To have those qualities, for him to give you props on something that you did, like, that feels really, really good. It's just like that, oh, fuck, that little extra motivation. Like, okay, not quite sure exactly what he's saying, but it feels good to be recognized by somebody. But he said alternate assignments, and that stuck with me for the longest until I realized, that would just mean be creative. It's taking what's being given to you, or whatever tasks are being given to you, and just do something a little bit differently. And if you can't do something differently, then do something completely different. Scrap what you're doing and start over and do something different. And again, the inspiration, right? That was inspiring to me. Very, very rarely had I felt that feeling when I was that old from anybody, really. So that stuck with me. That's stuck with me up until this day. But it's that same feeling of inspiration from people around you who maybe they have certain traits or certain abilities that you really admire in them. And then when they give you props, like, oh shit, fuck, hell yeah. Imagine having a community like that, where everyone's supporting each other like that. Everyone's fucking hyping each other up. Everyone's helping each other out. Like, how can you not succeed, right? How can you not succeed? Anyways, enough ranting for today. Story 20. Let's get it. Come on, Finn. Any last words?